And now the next boom. Countries around the world in the middle of an infrastructure boom. We have talked about this. We talked about the bridge issue here in this country, and we've talked about it in selective other countries. But, it is truly global. And here to tell you how to play it is Shawn Baldwin, Chairman and CEO of Capital Management Group. And, Shawn, this is something Cramer's been talking a lot about. And we talk about some of the companies that are involved in this. That could be Fluor, or it could be Foster Wheeler, or it could be Kellogg Brown and Root. Wait, there's a lot of companies that are involved in the building. But could you first give everyone a sense of how global and how big this is?
Global infrastructure plays, first of all, are going to be the driving force going forward. When we talk about infrastructure, to put it in context, there are over 1 billion people, another 1 billion people coming on in line within the next decade. Out of that, those incomes for those guys, 200 million of those people are going to have incomes of 15,000 or more. That is driving bridges, roads, airways, communications, everything that everyone has here that they take for granted. All of that is going to be needed in these other areas, in what's called the BRIC countries and what's called the GCC countries.
And BRIC is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and GCC is everything on the Arabian Peninsula but poor old Yemen.
Poor old Yemen. Gulf Cooperation Council companies.
Right. All right. Now okay, so this is basically anywhere that's growing.
Right.
And what is the size? How much money do they have to spend here?
Well, first of all, to put it in the scope, Goldman has raised a $6.5 billion fund. The first initial fund started off with AIG in 1994, but the 800-pound gorilla in the room is Macquarie. Macquarie has done a number of things, and when I say infrastructure plays...
that's the Australian-based company,
That's the Australian-based company, and it's misleading. It's a bank. There's a number of mutual funds. They have companies that kind of cooperate with each other. One play that they did that makes a lot of sense was they bought the Chicago Tollway.
Yes.
This cost $1.8 billion. And what they did in the Chicago deal was they would buy the pieces of property and then they would take them public. And they did this first initially because they caught into this kind of serendipitous craze that went on in Australia where the government was forcing people to put their money into retirements. And they said, well, hey, we'll buy the assets, put them back, sell them to people, and what was going to look better like a long-term stream. Now, in terms of that, because of the recurring nature of their revenues, and also because they are long-term matches pension fund liabilities, they're a great fit for investors and an investing trend that will occur, as we talked about before, with institutional investors diving headfirst into this class.
And Macquarie, just so people know, does, like you said, it's complicated because there's a lot of different parts of it, but you do have parts that trade here. So if you can check, you will be able to find there are some elements of the broader Macquarie family that trade here.
Yes.
All right. Now, and you're talking about even in Dubai, this was interesting. They're going to be spending over the next 5 years $230 billion.
$230 billion, 40 minutes away in Qatar, there's going to be $150 billion over the next 5 years.
I was just there. These are very small spaces, right? This is a lot of building up and new roads and new environmental systems.
Context again, $1 trillion is going to that region for the next 20 years, regardless of the price of oil. $1 trillion, 430 million inhabitants. 22% of that, 22% of those people control approximately 78% of the wealth.
That is incredible, and you see it there. But let me just say, a lot of them run companies that do the infrastructure that aren't, let's just say, easy to buy into.
Correct.
If you don't live there, or even if you do live there. So what are the plays? Is it Foster Wheeler?
Another novelty way that guys are going to be able to participate is a very little-known instrument called a sukuk. S-U-K-U-K. Sukuks are essentially, they're like corporate bonds, but they're not, because Muslims don't believe in interest. And there's another phenomenon that's driving that, because there's 6.1 billion people, 1.5 billion people are Muslim. These are Sharia-compliant structures. You're going to hear more about it in the future because it's a negotiated market that's disintermediated. It's like a bond, but it doesn't pay interest. But it doesn't pay interest. Different structure. The underlying assets are tied to sukuks because there's no notional derivative product in the sukuk. And people are going to purchase those sukuks. There's already been a tremendous amount of purchases by banks and insurance companies in London who now have passed a law that says that they can sell that paper onto the citizenry with a no tax impact basis. Right now, culturally in the U.S., that's not occurring because of just a number of other reasons, but you'll be sure that it will occur. And that is fascinating. All right, so sukuk being the new way to play into infrastructure, that is a new angle. Thanks so much for being with us, Shawn. Always love to have Shawn with us. And, hey, he's one of the guys that got into that Google IPO at day